Welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be about the Ravens' Week 17 dominant win over the Miami Dolphins, clinching the number one seed in the AFC and winning the AFC North divisional title. Before we jump in today, please make sure you press that follow button if you're not already, as well as share this podcast with your fellow Baltimore Ravens fans and follow on the Wedge 52 Gridiron Instagram. Make sure you guys are all tapped in as the NFL playoffs are making an approach very, very soon here. Stay up to date on all Wedge 52 Gridiron content on both Spotify and Instagram by pressing follow in both locations. This week, the Baltimore Ravens took down the Miami Dolphins 56-19. Another battle between two of the top teams in the league. This time, both of them in the AFC. A lot of potential for both of these teams heading into this week. A lot of people saying it's going to be the Ravens. A lot of people saying it's going to be the Dolphins. Not many people, if any, myself included, would have predicted the Baltimore Ravens to win 56-19. Back-to-back weeks of the Baltimore Ravens absolutely dominating one of the best teams in the league, obviously coming off the Christmas Day victory against the San Francisco 49ers, who just locked up the number one seed in the NFC. And then the Baltimore Ravens absolutely destroying the Miami Dolphins at home in their Week 17 matchup. This week's Offensive Player of the Week is none other than Lamar Jackson. He went 18 out of 21 on the day, 321 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, a perfect 158.3 passer rating. Absolutely incredible day by Lamar Jackson, doing his thing, as well as 6 rushes for 35 yards. Lamar Jackson putting in what will potentially be his final bid at the MVP for the 2023 season. Lamar Jackson has himself probably the best chances in the league, pending, what kind of happens next week with a couple of the potential suitors that are in that MVP race. CMC, I would expect, he's kind of banged up a little bit. I would expect him to sit out a little bit next week as they've already clinched. And then after that, it's kind of Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, maybe Jared Goff. I think he's kind of pushed himself out, just by default of the other players. Nothing, wrong with Goff the past few weeks. But, all of that will be discussed a little bit more in tomorrow's episode of the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. Lamar Jackson, absolutely incredible, dominating performance against the Miami Dolphins for that offense, who put up 8 touchdowns on the day. Wow. Defense Player of the Week goes to Geno Stone, who had 8 tackles and 1 interception. Geno Stone saw an increased payload, obviously, with Kyle Hamilton being out. Geno's been playing a lot, obviously, even with Kyle Hamilton, but a little bit more pressure put on Geno Stone to kind of, him and Marcus Williams to kind of be, and Marlon Humphrey from that cornerback position, but, to kind of show that this Ravens secondary can still hang with the big boys. Jalen Waddle was out for this contest, although Tyreek Hill played, and that Ravens secondary was able to hold Tyreek to just 6 catches for 76 yards. Not bad for who's been the best wide receiver in the league this season. Mr. Geno Stone, 8 tackles, like I said, added an interception to his season total of 7. Absolute career year for Mr. Geno Stone, and he is this week's Defensive Player of the Week. Heading into some other stats from the game, Gus Edwards, 16 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers, 3 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers, first career 100-yard game. Congratulations there. As well as Zay Flowers breaking the Ravens rookie wide receiver franchise record for yards in a season. I believe he sits at 858 total yards this season. I would expect him, if the Ravens sit starters, which, presumably they will, or at least, for the majority of the game. But Zay Flowers, 142 away from 1,000 if he does get the green light. But I would expect Zay to be one of those, 6 or 7 offensive guys that, may not play a whole lot, if at all, next week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justice Hill had a nice day. all around for him. 3 carries for 48 yards, 5 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown, as well as a 78-yard kickoff return to start off the second half. That was later punched in for a Lamar Jackson touchdown. Part of that, Jackson 5. Obviously, a very famous, popular line amongst Ravens fans and Lamar Jackson fans. First one this season, the Jackson 5. And then Rashad Bateman, 4 catches for 54 days. Isaiah Likely had a good day, 2 catches for 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Odell Beckham Jr. with just 1 catch for 33 yards. But that was a very incredible sideline, over-the-shoulder, toe-dragging catch. It is nice to see you, Odell Beckham, playing at your best numbers-wise. Not his greatest year. Ravens fans, NFL fans, watch the game. Watch these games to truly see how this Ravens team has been playing and dominating behind the forces of MVP frontrunner Lamar Jackson this year. Defensively for the Baltimore Ravens, Roquan Smith, 7 tackles and a very nice one-handed interception on the day, picking off Tua. And then Madubuike, 5 tackles and another sack on the year for him. Incredible career year for Justin Madubuike as well. And then defensively, Ronald Darby, Arthur Millette, Rockerson, and Darrell Wardley all played, very solid in the, picking up the slack in terms of Kyle Hamilton being out. And then Marlon Humphrey did leave that game in the first half with a calf injury. I have not seen, too much of an update. I don't suspect it to be major. So hopefully that was more of a precautionary, keeping Marlon safe. I do think Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton will be green lights ready to go by the Ravens playoff game, 2-3 weeks from now, when that time comes. For the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Running back Devon Achane, 14 carries for 107 yards. And like I said, Tyreek Hill, 6 catches for just 76 yards. The Baltimore Ravens clinched the division and the AFC 1 seed. The AFC playoffs will run through Baltimore in the 2023 season. Winning the division is nice. Now let's, the Ravens, Baltimore fans, let's make it worth something. Winning the division is nice, but let's do something useful with it. Let's get to the conference, one game at a time. As always, like I've always said, 1-0 every day. Let's just worry about the next opponent. Right now, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's all that matters. Looking ahead at the Pittsburgh Steelers, their Week 17 matchup, they won against the Seattle Seahawks 30-23. Rudolph got the start, 18 out of 24, 274 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The Steelers' offense was mostly carried by the rushing attack this week. Najee Harris had 27 carries for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Jaylen Warren, 13 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. When Rudolph did throw the ball, his favorite target was George Pickens, who had 7 catches for 131 yards in the victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Moving into this matchup, a lot of, a couple of factors, kind of playing part in this one. The first one, potentially many Baltimore Ravens to rest, in terms of, not risking an injury to a serious player, starter or key role player in terms of injury, resting guys who have been banged up, dealing with a couple things, guys maybe like Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton obviously will sit, even Zay Flowers, who's dealing with some stuff in practice last week. Ronnie Stanley could, use just a week to get healthier, as well as, guys like anyone else who's been banged up, injured, kind of missing a few days of practice here and there. All of them would be nice to kind of sit them out, focus on their health. One thing, though, that does go with that is if guys fully sit out against the Pittsburgh Steelers, that will be 3 weeks between game action from the Miami game to the next opponent. Personally, I am, I do support sitting players to prevent an injury, but what I prefer more so would actually be allow these players to play 1 or 2 drives maybe, just so they keep in the same practice rhythm, same game prep rhythm to start out the game, 1 or 2 drives, and then pull them. That way, they're at least getting some game experience. Keeping that game preparation mindset is a little bit easier to do for 2 weeks off, like it will be from week 18 to the playoff game. That you can treat that more like a regular season bye versus having a full 3 weeks off. Either way, the Ravens seem to be locked in. Coach Harbaugh and that coaching staff will make the decisions that they feel is best for the team. And either way, the playoffs, whole new season, got to come out swinging at the beginning. As long as the players are ready for that when the time comes, that's all I ask. Another thing, Rudolph is going to get the start for the Pittsburgh Steelers despite Kenny Pickett being healthy. So they're electing to roll with Rudolph, who has played, average this year. Pickett was average to maybe below average. So just an interesting thing there for the Pittsburgh side of the game. And then, the third kind of factor is, although the Ravens have clinched, their playoff seeding, their division, obviously, and maybe resting some players, the Baltimore Ravens still would like to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers as always. Probably the Ravens' biggest rival. The Pittsburgh Steelers are still eligible for a playoff spot. If Baltimore is able to beat Pittsburgh Steelers, that eliminates them from playoff contention, which would always be nice to do. Looking at the team rankings for both of these teams, offensively for Ravens, total yards per game, they are 4th with 393, rushing yards 1st at 160, 2nd in points at 29.6, and 7th in third down percentage at 42.8. Going against that Steelers offense, who is 25th in yards at just 320, 12th in rush yards at 116, 27th in points at 17.9, and 23rd in third down percentage at 36.4. Defensively for both these units, Baltimore Ravens are currently 8th in yards at 329, 13th in rushing yards at 107, 1st in points allowed at 16.4, and 6th on third downs at 36.2%. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are 22nd in yards at 367, 18th in rushing yards at 116, 7th in points at 19.6, and 21st on third downs at 39.5% success allowed to opposing offenses. So, kind of quick look. Pittsburgh Steelers on, team statistically wise, middle of the pack, offensively and defensively, still managing to, have a winning record at this point. And, not currently a playoff team, but right on the cusp in the hunt. A Pittsburgh win and a couple of losses, to the teams above them can potentially result in the Steelers still making the playoffs. Next up is my Ravens 3 keys to success for this game. Number 1 is going to be stop the run. Ravens defense has been very good at stopping the run for the most part throughout the entire season, ranking 13th in yards allowed at just 107. Where they have struggled is allowing chunk plays coming on the ground. Helping eliminate that will help the Baltimore Ravens, stop that Steelers offense. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren combined for 200 rushing yards almost last week. And they would much rather prefer to run the ball, given that Mason Rudolph is currently their quarterback. They're definitely going to be a run-first team come game time this Saturday. My second Ravens keys to success help them improve their chances of winning is going to be converting on third down. Not only will it potentially be our backup offense that will help them, keep drives going along. They're not going to be used to seeing these situations potentially as much. Third down situations, game clock, management situations. So keep them on the field, trying to keep them in as much rhythm as possible will help out our offense. As well as, we're going to need points if some of our playmakers are going to be out, potentially Zay Flowers, OBJ potentially, Lamar obviously. I would expect he's the first one on that list of players that would be elected to sit, by the coaching staff. Guys like that. And that Steelers defense pretty solid at points allowed at just 19.6. So definitely need to take them where we can get them in this matchup. And that helps us control the game, control the clock, play the game how we want to in what potentially might be a low-scoring game between Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers. And then my third and final key to success for the Baltimore Ravens is going to be stopping T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt has been absolutely incredible this season. One of the Defensive Player of the Year candidates on the season. He has 60 tackles, 16 for a loss, 17 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown on the season. Mr. T.J. Watt has been incredible since he's entered the league and has continued that this season. Slowing him down will help Tyler Huntley stay comfortable and make good decisions, but it may be a struggle if offensive tackles, Ronnie Stanley, if he gets a rest, to help his health, help him recover some more. Potentially Moses, who's been, in and out of practice the past 2 or 3 weeks. It's all going to come down to the depth of the Baltimore Ravens going against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are fighting to keep their season alive. That is all I have for today's episode of the Wedge 52 Gridiron podcast. Thank you all for listening. If you made it this far, please remember to press that follow button and share. And most importantly, go Ravens.